So I think today we are going to present a very interesting paper in my viewpoint, and hopefully that will be entertaining to you. And the paper is titled Freedom of Information and Corporate Pollution. But we are currently thinking to reposition the paper to a more open government perspective, which I'm going to share in the next slide. Yeah, but basically this paper was Adriana Cordes from Winthrop University and my colleague here in National Tsing Hua University and Jing Zhang from Monash University. And yeah, as you can see from the logo, indeed, we are also Tsing Hua, but we are Tsing Hua in Taiwan, Hsinchu, not one Beijing. All right, so let me start with the motivation. Of course, nowadays we all agree, right? The industrial pollution is a major, catastrophe risk in our society. And what we have learned, I mean, from this crowd, right? The disclosure matters, and what have been well studied in the past is a firm's voluntary or mandatory disclosure. And but what we haven't known, okay, what has been little studied is about the government's role here, right? We talk about firms disclosure, but how about government's disclosure? And we all know nowadays people talk about open governments. And what exactly is open government? Open government means that the data, decision procedure, and all enforcements in the government should be as transparent as possible. So public have access to government's data, decision, and procedures. And then with such information disclosure, citizens can get involved in policy making and make sure there's, or at least playing a government's role, and which enhances the government's accountability. And with all of this public oversight, we want to see whether this will matter in industrial pollution for a couple of for a couple of mechanisms we are going to detail, but mainly because the pollution or environmental concerns are big public good. So only government has the authority or has the ability to cure this. Or at least the government and the public will take the full responsibility at the very end. Okay, and what exactly can open government be achieved? Well, usually it's achieved through the law, which is called Freedom of Information Act. Abbreviation will be FOIA. And as in the United States, there's a federal and the state level FOIA laws. And what are these laws? And these laws actually including the following provisions. Let me just give you some example. For example, like for someone who asks for access for some public records or some government statistics or government activities, then there should be no additional fees. Because to prevent government officials to set up very high fees to prevent people from asking. And the second type of provision will be timely responses mandated with a reasonable time, i.e., if you initial request to the government asking, oh, what have you done this and that, and the government should get back to you, at least reasonable time, not like 10 years from now. And the third classification about penalties, because if the government officials or agents, they don't comply, they don't get back to you, then there should be some penalty, either criminal or civil. And the fourth category will be about the structural appeal procedure. For example, if you request and the bureau deny you, then actually you should have some way to appeal to their decision. And lastly, in your appeal or even in your seek of legal or court decisions, then you will be incurred of some lawyer fee. Then the government will reimburse your legal expenses if you are on the right side. Okay, so with these different kind of Freedom of Information Act provisions, we can achieve a better open government. And so our argument is that if a country, if a state's FOIA setting is stronger, then there's more quasi-private information, which although in the first version we want to claim is public information, but then we realize public information will be too strong because if you don't ask for it, then you will never get information. But the thing is, once you ask for it, then you can get information. So it's between public and private information. Yeah. And of course, then let us take a step back. It's like, okay, but does it really matter? Well, historically, our anecdotal evidence suggests that FOIA is really powerful. And this is one of the most famous examples. It's in Flint, Michigan water. And this story has been featured in many US, like Washington Post, as we have shown here in their headline 2016. That is, people figure out that in the water, the drinking water, the lead level is very high. So how then the professor Mark Edwards, who was affiliated with Virginia Tech back that time, used FOIA to ask the Department of Environmental Quality, and got to figure out that actually the department, maybe because of budget issue, didn't fix the corrosion control, which make the water tube kind of the lead being released to the water. So which is the first famous example. Another famous example is happened in Massachusetts, and somehow in the area leukemia has been kind of spiked during the Woburn area, and Mike and Linda couple used FOI law to discover that actually the landfill expansion plans in the neighborhood, which lead to such a pollution, and actually their initiation and their publicity makes the cancellation of the plans. So with these two anecdotal evidence, I hope I convince you that FOIA has teeth and is really powerful. Okay, so here comes our main hypothesis. What is our main hypothesis? Which is company will reduce their state level pollution in response to the legislative actions that strengthen state level FOIA laws. And please notice that we focus on state level pollution because we use a staggered DID, which focus on different states, FOIA status. Of course, you may be arguing that how about federal level? But of course, federal level is universal, right? And also for this kind of environmental enforcement, which the state level EPA plays a more important role. And we also discussed the three possible mechanisms through which FOIA laws reduce pollution. Of course, then they coexist, so they are not mutually exclusive. The first will be increased public oversight. We argue that FOIA laws encourage citizens and the interest group to monitor state environmental agents' activity, no matter in regulation, but also in enforcement. And the second will be anti-corruption effects, because FIA can effectively have a paper trail which exposes the regulatory leniency or even unethical practices. The last one will be enforcement. We know if there's a law but no enforcement, then the law is basically teethless. And we want to argue that actually FOIA can also enhance the enforcement because let me give you a example. It's like you can use FOIA law to ask the EPA how many times you have inspected this facility or that facility, right? With this, you can actually know like how enforcement is strong enough or not. Okay, so let me quickly talk about our findings. Let me take a look at my time. Okay, I think I'm doing well. All right, first we use the change of state level FOIA laws. Notice that we don't use the level because the FOIA laws is the strength is measured in a scale from 0 to 9. So we have to focus on the change, say from 1 to 2 or from 2 to 3 or even 3 to 5. Sometimes there's this change. We focus on change, okay, which are plausibly exogenous to firms' decisions, because these are driven by the congressmen and all these kind of advocate groups. And we found that overall level of emissions in the state is inversely related to strengthened state level FIA laws, which is perhaps not surprising. But more interestingly, we do the following. We call it FOIA for FOIA. That is, we email each state's environmental department asking them how many FOIA requests you have got over the previous 2 decades or 3 decades. Give us like your annual statistics. But how do we get that? We tell them, okay, this is under the FOIA coverage, right? So we have a right to ask you to tell us how many FOIA requests you got. So with this, we can actually measure state level the attention to FOIA, right? To make sure that FOIA is really used against the pollution. And we also found that there's a negative association between FOIA loss and the pollution. And this relation is enhanced in states with a higher pre-existing level of corruption, because FOIA can cure such corruption if it ever exists. And more importantly, it's also the effect is stronger among more lenient environmental standards, right? Which may be more tolerant of pollution, but now after citizens surveillance, then the environment improvement take place. Okay, so let me quickly tell you our empirical design. We first calculate FOI score for each state in every year. And as I mentioned, based on total 10 provisions, we have a 0 to 9. And then we trace the change, because we have to focus on change. So we have a DID setting. And so we calculate the average change every year. And what we can find from the right-hand side map, the darker color denotes stronger increase per year in terms of freedom of information. And as you can see, we see I think this is Colorado. Is it Colorado? Okay. Oh, maybe not Colorado. Okay. At least we have Pennsylvania, which is very darker. And we also have Minnesota, right? And which they increase by 0.2 or 0.4 score every year, which means they have they add one more new provision every 5 years or every 2.5 years. Yeah. And of course, you can also see some other state, they don't change too much. Then we combine our state level FOI score with the following data sets. First, we collect the toxic release inventory database. Some of you may be aware of this. This is the most famous factory facility level of pollution in the United States. And we also merge it with a National Establishment Time Series database, which is called NETS. It contains the number of employee, sales, and the credit at the location, even officer's name. And we will combine with company stats financial accounting data for public firms, and we will gather the macroeconomic data from Bureau of Economic Analysis. Okay, so we end up focus on sample 91 to 2020 because that's when the FOIA law starts. And we construct a firm state year panel because different states have different regulations. Well, in FOIA varies. And we measure every firm's pollution in a state year based on their total amount of toxic release of all facility the firm owns in the state. And we scale it by number of employees. Why? Because a firm can shrink its production in a facility, then of course the pollution also drops. So we want to come up with a scaled pollution. All right, so this is our baseline DID regression. On our left-hand side, we have a pollutants, which is the pollution level I have mentioned in the previous slide of firm I stated as in year T. And on our right-hand side is our key explained variable, which is a delta FOIA, which denote the change in FOIA score. This could be 1, 2, or even -1, because it could be possible somehow the congressman remove one provision, then the score drop from say 2 to 1, something like this. Okay, and we have to use a delta change because a state can experience multiple changes in FOI, so we need to focus on the change only. And for state experience every event, then we consider a 6-year window, like 3 years before, 3 years after. And why do we do this setting? Again, is because there could be multiple changes for a state, right? So we have to do this. So we can run a DID regression. And of course, for state never experience any events, we include all years. All right, so let me use this chart to illustrate how we select our sample. For example, there's a state A, which experienced a change in FOIA in 2012. Then, as you can see, this is state A, right? We have three dark blue blocks for 12, 13, and 14. This is for post-event. And then we have a 3-year pre-event from 09 to 11. So for these days, we consider the total 6 years, and we don't consider before or after. Suppose the state has only experienced one change. And for state B, which never experienced any change in FOIA, then all years will be included. All facility or public firms will be included. And for state C, now it experienced like 2 changes, one in 2011 and another 2018. So as you can see, the 6 years window here is included, and the second 6 years window is included. But suppose there's any overlapping, we drop the overlapping events. So we come out with a DID setting, so we allow the change to be fixed. Okay, 0 for the first 3 years and 111 for, or anyway, the change for 3 years, which allow us to estimate this regression in a DAD fashion. Of course, you may wonder, so Paul, why don't you just use FOIA score, right, to run a simple like a pooled regression? Yes, that's what we did in the first version, and we got consistent robust result. But then if we do that, then we couldn't use a DID approach, which would be more convincing in general, I think. And this is our summary statistics. Let me see how I'm doing. Okay, good. And as you can see, the average FOIA is around like a 5.5, between 5 and 6, i.e. the state has like a 5 to 6 provisions. And in terms of average, we are looking at the average change, we are looking like a 0.2 changes, like adding 1 provision every 5 years, something like this. And this is our baseline regression. As you can see, we regress, right, like pollutants or toxicity. On the right-hand side, we have FOIA. Oh, there's one thing I forgot to mention. Here, our pollutants are actually adjusted for their toxicity. All right, so if a pollutant is more toxic, then it has a higher weight. So as you can see, if a state experiences a change in FOIA, then firms will pollute much less by like a 3 to 4%, no matter in total number or scale number. So we avoid the downsizing effect. And as just like most DID setting, right, we need to make sure parallel trend assumptions are satisfied. So in this setting, because remember we are 3 and 3 years, right? So we use pretreatment -3 as a benchmark year. Then we show that -2 year, -1 year are insignificant different between these treated and control states. So, but after FOI has increased, then we have a significant negative coefficient here, which justify the parallel trend assumption and strengthen our the causal interpretation of our DID. We include a firm state fixed effects, right? Because currently all our unit is a firm state unit, not just firm, it's a firm state unit. And to further strengthen our identification, we also consider pair facility across state borders. And so we match a facility with a FOIA change event to another facility just cross the border, which is within 100 kilometer radius. And they have to be in the same 2-digit SIC industry, but they don't experience any FOIA change in their own state before and after. And so we total come up with about 400 unique matched facility pairs. And what we found is that still in this kind of pure, what to say, a better matched sample, we still find a significant negative effect of FOIA on the first pollution, except the first column, which is marginal. So with all these evidence, I hope I convince you that the open government or the lower information cost indeed help reduce industrial pollution, and the effect is causal. Now I would like to talk about the most exciting part of our study. That is, we email every state's environmental agency by saying, oh, based on your state's blah 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 act, because FOIA law doesn't have a standard name across all states, right? The different states have a different name. So we tell them, oh, this is your act, and we are making this request for the number of FOI requests you received, and we emailed total 50 states, and actually, total 50 states responded, and 42 actually provide useful data. But unfortunately, there are some non-reporting states say that, oh, we don't have records, which is weird. And some states say, oh, we don't break down by year or agency. And some states say, oh, the information restricted to only our state residents. I don't know whether this argument will apply or not. But anyway, we try our best. So we end up getting the number of requests, but we scale by number of state facility. Because if a state has more productive the pollution, then maybe the request is higher. Anyway, so you can see the state with the most requests will be New York and also New Jersey, right? So they have above 40 requests per facility. And in Texas, it's 0. Oh, sorry, it's not 0, it's no data. Yeah. All right, so then we look at whether FOIA change indeed leads to more FOIA requests, and we found supporting evidence. Indeed, when FOIA laws are stronger, then residents indeed make more requests, which support our confirm the teeth of FOIA. And more importantly, when we regress the local pollution on the FOIA request per facility, we found a negative correlation here, confirming that when the public is paying more attention or has a right to monitor local pollution, indeed, local pollution reduced, which supports our first mechanism, which is increased public oversight by FOI request data we gathered. And now how about corruption? So then we split our FOI change into two variables. One is for state with high corruption before pre-existing corruption before a sample period. The other is of a low corruption. And we found that the FIL effects only exist in high corruption states, which makes sense because for these states, there is more room for firms to get away from their pollution, right? But after the introduction of FOIA or the strengthening of FOIA, then such corruption can be cured. So which supports our second mechanism is about corruption prevention. Then how about the political alignment to the Republican? So we use a PAI index, which basically measures how close the state government is toward the Republican mentality or Republican orientation. We found that FOIA effects mainly exist in states with high Republican-oriented states, which may be more lenient in environmental regulation. So this result support the third mechanism about enforcement. Okay, so now I will conclude. I think I'm right on time. Let me talk about our contribution and policy implication. First, we provide evidence on the open government benefits. Private studies discuss open government effectiveness, and and the paper we show is a modeling paper. We provide empirical evidence from the pollution or environmental perspectives. And secondly, we provide evidence about the enhanced transparency and corporate behavior. There has been enough study about disclosure, media monitoring, reduce corporate misconduct. And we provide another perspective, right? Not just a firm itself, but for the government. The government also has a, and we found that indeed the information cost will change firm behavior through the government. And the third aspect, we make contribution about advancing research on information acquisition costs. The previous study have talked about information costs play And we use the FOI loss, which has time series and cross-sectional variations, and which allow us to implement a staggered DID and to mitigate confounding factors and to provide a causal to justify causal effect of FOI loss. And that will be my presentation. And thank you very much for your time. And I did look forward to our discussions comments.